What's up, everybody? It's Andrea. Today, Baran continues to be the best pirate captain in the quadrant. We're really glad that Koral hid the artifact in his jacket, and we asked the question, what do we need space pails for? Come nerd out with us.
Welcome to the TNG Podcast, the number one place in the Alpha Quadrant to geek out about all things Star Trek: The Next Generation. This is your co-host, Shereese.
I'm your co-host, Andrea. Today we're breaking down Season 7, Episode 5, Gambit, Part 2. This episode was written by Naren Shankar and directed by Alexander Singer. In a continuation from last week's shenanigans, Picard and Riker try to find out what the space pirates want while the Enterprise pursues them. What are your initial What are your initial thoughts on this episode?
My initial thoughts were, let's see how this ends, because I have no idea. So that's where I was. What about you?
I remember the ending clearly. I don't remember anything before the ending. So it's like, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I didn't even know this was a two-parter. Like, when I think about these episodes, I have like two scenes that come to mind, and both of them are in part one. So this was a total blank slate for me.
What are the scenes?
The two scenes it's the one when Picard like turns around and he's like Galen. Although I didn't remember why that was a big deal, but I remember that just being like, oh, he's alive and in this cool outfit. And then I remembered a scene where they were like, Picard's dead, which happened right before commercial break.
Yeah.
So
like
those are literally the only two things I remember from all of this.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
I was super excited about, I was super excited about part two, because I was like, this is like a whole new episode for me. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Totally.
I don't even know what they're doing now.
What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like had there been a bit more economy of storytelling, both of these episodes could have been condensed into one story. But okay, I guess they needed some.
I thought about
stuff.
that. But I also feel like I don't think there would be enough time in 42 minutes to really get the story in. However, I agree with you. I don't think we needed 2 episodes either. It feels like an episode and a half kind of a situation, which is like not an option. But if they had one of those season finale type deals, or the May sweeps situation where they could make it a little bit longer, I think that would have been perfect for this story.
Like an extended cut on one episode. So actually, Ronald D. Moore, who was one of the head writers, said about these 2 episodes, quote, I felt we ran out of story in part 2. There were places where I was treading water. We had to find the lost ark, and I don't know what the lost ark was. Instead, we had a device from ancient Vulcan myth that had mythic properties that you explain are telepathic. I was trying really hard to make this work, and in the end, I just said, all right, maybe we just go for it and make it a classic Gene Roddenberry kind of message of like, think happy thoughts, to make it something which tied into the backstory of Vulcan and Sarek and peace. Like, I thought it would fit in nicely, and I'm not sure it did. So I was like, yeah, I feel like with some episodes, kind of like Gambit Part 1 and 2, you can sort of feel that the writers were like, we don't totally love this one. Like, that was kind of the sense I could get, or I got from them, where I was like, I feel like they weren't even buying it, but whatever. I'm just looking forward to getting this one over with. But I also feel like this is going to be the feeling for most of season 7, so I might as well get used to it. What are your initial thoughts?
I agree. I think you should get used to it. And I think this is what season 7 is going to feel like. So let's just like accept it, because it's not like we're in season 2 where we're like, oh, but it's going to get so much better next season. We don't have that luxury. So we need to be like, well, this is the episode. And and then just move on. But I will say, I actually liked a lot of things about this episode. And I agree with Ronald D. Moore that the story was kind of muddled again, which is why it should have been like a 1.5 thing. And they could have really focused on this psionic weapon, and they could have cleaned up the story, I think.
Definitely.
I think there was too many storylines going on, and none of them were totally compelling. But I think they could have cleaned this up, because I'm thinking about that episode. I forget the name of it, but the one with the Baryon sweep, and Picard's the only one on the ship, and the pirates and stuff. Yeah, that was such a great episode. There was and it was like such perfect storytelling. It was really exciting. What was going on in the A plot and the B plot totally coincided.
100%.
They crammed a lot into that short amount of time, and I feel like these 2 episodes could have been that. Like, had they had more, I don't know, time, capacity, space, whatever, something polish this story, it could have been as exciting and engaging and kind of tightly told as that story. But in any case, we didn't get that. We get this. So we're going to talk about this so that we can stop talking about this. So it opens up Actually, at the end of last episode, it was a cliffhanger.
Yep.
We saw that Picard fired upon the Enterprise and was hitting the nacelles, and it was like electricity sparking. And you had this hypothesis that somehow it's going to be like not really doing any damage, and the ship is going to pretend to do something to act like they are damaged, and that's how they're going to get out of it. And surprise, surprise, that's exactly what happened.
I know. I was like,
who knew?
I know. I was like, well, I honestly didn't remember. I couldn't even give myself a pat on the back to be like, good job, Andrea, remembering that.
No,
I just sort of thought like,
of how would they get out of this to make a whole second episode?
The only option is for something like this, especially since at the tail end of part 1, Data was like, Riker must know we're going to change the command codes. Like, he must be trying to communicate with us in some way. Let's make it look good. So I was like, this is kind of the only thing they can do. So yeah, we're picking up where we left off. There's only minimal damage to the nacelles. Riker must have done something to their weapon. So Data decides to play along and make it look like the ship is wounded. So it's like, pew, 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 bzz, 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 electricity. Yeah. All that. We are really good special effects artists. Just going to say. So,
yeah, and if you're looking for a special effects artist, go ahead and send us an email, info@thetngpodcast.com.
We only charge $1 million an hour. We are really, really, really affordable. For us to go, yeah.
Pew, pew, pew.
Anyway, all right. So the Romulan Talera says the logical course of action is to withdraw. The Enterprise is disabled, but it still has superior firepower, which I think is funny because Data ordered Worf to fire back at phaser set to 25%. So I was like, ooh, yeah, you guys are way outgunned if 25% power is still a lot for you guys.
Yeah, and you saw when they got hit by those phasers, how the whole ship was like rocking and shaking. You're like, it's like they picked a fight with someone way outside of their weight class and had no shame about it. So Talera is trying to convince Captain Baran, we got to get out of here. Like, we're not going to win this fight, even though they're a little bit crippled. If they hit us a few more times with that 25%, we're still going to be blown out of the sky. So Baran's like, all right, fine, get us out of here. And then Worf is like, Data, they're getting away. We have to go get them. We have to stop them. And I was like, sir, did you not just hear Data say we're going to play along? Did we not hear that? Or do we not know that there's a whole plan going on that you don't understand? But there's a plan. Yep. Because if you chase them, sir, and fire upon them, this will ruin the plan. There was no point in pretending to be damaged or like I don't know. This just irritated me. He's not going along with the plan.
Girl, this is why you're Data and I guess I'm Worf because I'm like, after them, right? Don't let him get away. And you're like, idiot. That's not the plan. I'm like, oh, that's right. My bad.
You're like, I just had you shoot them with 25%. If we wanted to disable them, we could have disabled them. If we wanted to board them, we could have boarded them. If we wanted to tractor them into the cargo bay, we could have done that too. This is playing along.
Yeah.
So totally. Worf is just like so not on board with this because he is a man of action. And then after the ship scurries away, they quickly lose all traces of them and can't chase them. And so Worf was like, great, now we can't even chase them. And so he's just like climbing the walls. And really Data's like, we're going to stay here and investigate even further. And he's like, ah!
Yeah. The more pissed Worf gets, the more Data's like, we're going to investigate even harder. He's like, damn it. Right?
Now we're going to investigate only with data we can get from sensors. We're not even going to go to the planet. We're not even going to travel there. Just whatever you can Worf get with your sensors. Here,
like white knuckling the bridge panel like so hard, right? So they take off, and on the Enterprise, Troy and Geordi are coming through, like they're kind of working through the face-to-face they had with Will to see if there's any secret message he was trying to relay. So they're sort of
like if he blinked twice for yes and once for no or something.
Yeah, they're sort of like replaying the interaction they had with him on like super slow-mo and like pausing and rewinding, right? And it's like nothing. So Worf tells Data that 2 starships are ready at each of the other archaeological sites in case the mercenaries showed up. So the Enterprise is going to have to remain here and collect data, which of course we said Worf doesn't like. But it turns out Geordi and Troy find a sequence of numbers embedded in his command codes that he transmitted. So maybe this is the secret message that they were hoping to find. And whenever I hear, I think of numbers, I'm like, I think of
the show Numbers.
No.
Oh,
I didn't even know there was a show called Numbers.
There is a show called Numbers.
Is it good?
Sort of.
So you'd give it a solid 5?
I'd give it a hard, C+, C-, depending on the episode.
Okay, all right.
I don't think it'd be your thing. It is about, but what's cool about it? It's about a genius who is a genius in math, and his brother is an FBI guy. And so he helps his
Profiler or
brother
something.
something. And so he helps his brother solve all these different kinds of crimes using different mathematical models. Everything from kidnapping to like, you know, schemes to defraud the government to like
a little bit like Foundation. That's like about the mathematical models of stuff. So
yeah, it is, but like with real math. Exactly. It's like that, but with like actual math. And so the guy breaks down like the equations and stuff, but it's really like Minority Report style where all the images are like on floating in the air and you see all the like numbers drawing and you don't know what's going on, but it all sounds really good. And then at the end, they're like, they have to be at the park right here. And you're like, whoa. They found him.
I think I may just live with your recap and not even bother with the actual show. What the sequence of numbers actually made me think of was like, okay, you've got blocks of numbers. The first thing I would try is like, let's plug in these numbers as coordinates and see if they take us anywhere. That would be like step one. And then from there, I'd be like, okay, if that doesn't lead to anything, like the coordinates are like the center of a sun or some crap, like we can't go to, I'm out of options, right?
So that'd be your first and only thought is that these must be coordinates.
Coordinates, yeah. Coordinates is what I was thinking, or like a 1-800 help number or something.
See, that would have been my first guess.
888 help, yeah, or something. It's like okay,
it's 1-800 mercenary. Yeah. I think I would have just said, computer, analyze this. What is this? That's probably where I would have gone with. Right? I don't think I would have even known where to start. But in any case, they figure it out. It is coordinates. Great. So now they've got a place to go. And it was great that they took the time to do this investigation again, which is what we keep seeing every time Data's like, no, let's get more information. So they figure out that it's coordinates. They head off into the sunset. All is well. Back on the mercenary ship.
I love that you just wrap that up. We're like 6 minutes in and it's like, so everything's done
and everything's pretty good. So everything's good on the Enterprise at least. So back on the mercenary ship, Baran talks to, I didn't write this guy's name down, but the guy, Narek,
the engineer,
talks to Narek and he's like, how long is it going to take to repair the engines? Because the engines are blown yet again. They were already messed up before they ran for it. And he goes, it's going to take 5 hours at least. And Baran says, I want it in 3 hours or else your life is forfeit or something. And I was like, buddy, why don't you tell him it takes more hours than it really takes? Maybe tell him 10 hours, 15 hours.
Yeah, like 24 hours. And then, like I just thought, what part of 5 hours was fucking unclear to this idiot? Like what part
But we already know he does this.
Yeah.
So don't tell him the real time.
Yeah. Tell him 20 hours and then have him be psyched
20 hours no matter
when
how
it
long
takes
it
5.5.
takes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I feel like Baran is really continuing to live up to his quadrant's best boss mug that he has on his desk. And he's like, nailing it again, Baran. Yeah. And he's like, you better have it done by 3 or you're dead meat. And it's like, really? Okay.
And you're like, well, who's going to repair it after you kill him?
Yeah.
Are you going to repair it?
It's like having a secret and somebody in a movie being like, tell me the secret or I'll kill you. I'm like, well, if you kill me, the secret dies with me. So good luck with that.
You know what it's like? I always see this on these crime dramas I watch. Whenever there's a scene where someone's like about to jump off a building or something, the cops or FBI agents or whoever it may be always pull a gun on them and they're like, step off the ledge. And I never get it. I'm just like, if they don't if they don't come back onto the side of safety, you're going to shoot them. Well, either way, I think they win this round.
Yeah.
So they always nevertheless are like, okay, fine, I'll come off. And I'm like, this makes no sense. Why do we keep even writing this?
Girl,
this is like
right
totally
here,
illogical.
This right here is why you need to work in the film industry to be like, pause. This doesn't make any sense.
What did we do wrong here, guys? What did we do wrong?
Any hands? Anybody? Yeah.
And it's so funny. Yeah, I really should. It's so funny because it's one of those like tropes that gets repeated and it's so nonsensical to me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, don't kill yourself or I'll shoot you. That doesn't make sense.
Don't kill yourself or I'll kill you.
Right, exactly. I'm like, that doesn't track. But in any case, that's what's going on the mercenary ship. They're in all kinds of hurt.
Yes.
So Galen, I should say, Galen starts, which is Picard's like alias, starts antagonizing Riker because he's trying to antagonize Riker to build a closer bond between Riker and Captain Baran, right? So he starts antagonizing Riker and he's like, that was a good plan and blah, 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 blah. It was all your fault or whatever.
Good job, Riker. Yeah.
Yeah. And to the point where Riker finally responds by turning around and punching Picard in the face. I was like, oh my gosh.
Where in the jaw? Seriously.
This is a first. This was the first time we see Riker just haul out on Picard and maybe the last time, but I was legitimately shocked.
Seriously, I was like, holy crap, he really sent him flying. Like, and we know that this is Hollywood, right? So like nobody actually struck Sir Patrick Stewart, global treasure, but Riker, Jonathan Frakes is a really tall man.
Yeah.
He is really big. So imagine a punch from that guy. Holy crap, it had sent your head spinning to like Jupiter. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Now, they end up being like, all right, break it up, right? And so they said, that's kind of how they do it. If I were a bunch of pirates, yeah, break it up. So analyzing samples in the cargo hold, Picard is now like cool in his jets, and Talera comes to question Picard about why he didn't continue firing on the Enterprise. He knows how to reroute power at that station, so she's like, I'm trying to figure out, are you incredibly stupid or incredibly smart? But before she gets like super far into her questioning, the sample that Picard Galen is analyzing comes back positive for whatever they're searching for. So she alerts Baran immediately.
The Terracon percentage is 98% positive.
I'm so glad you wrote that down. I was like, it's a match.
I did, because I was like, Terracon, that's a dope word. That's really
cool, right? It sounds really
totally
cool.
legit too.
Like if I ever built like a clay structure in the Arizona desert, I would call it Terracon or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she alerts Baran to tell him that like they found this match, and he's like, bring it to me and don't let anyone near it. So I'm like, what the heck is this thing? But it's kind of a cool cutscene where Talera comes over to Baran, and Baran on his side in his ready room picks up, and we see Riker is just absolutely chilling on a chaise lounge. Okay. And he is totally basking, right? Baran tells Riker that Galen's usefulness on the ship is about to come to a sudden end because they need 2 artifacts, I guess it's like 3 pieces. And they've got one waiting for them and they need the other 2. So as soon as the second artifact is found, we're just going to get rid of Galen. And I was like, dang, thank God you're telling Riker this.
I know, right? Instead of anyone else on the crew.
Right.
It's kind of funny because he doesn't trust the crew because he's a horrible leader and knows that none of them respect him or anything else.
Yeah, because they're hostages.
So he really only has Riker as the newcomer on the block to potentially be an ally. It's like all the other allegiances have already been formed, and he can't trust that anybody is really going to be on his side without his little like Destructo remote control in his pocket.
Totally.
So you're kind of like, on the one hand, you're like, wow, I think you're trusting this guy too easily. But on the other hand, it's like, literally, who else could you trust? Absolutely no one, because you have no friends on this ship.
Yeah. Besides maybe Talera, she seems to like,
right.
He seems to confide in her and vice versa.
True.
But like,
so one person on the whole ship.
Yeah. Like that's a little lonely. I mean, I don't know how big this ship is. It doesn't seem big because it seems like a crew of like 5, but still like 1 person out of 5 is not a lot of trust to have.
I mean, I wouldn't want those odds if I was on a mercenary ship.
Absolutely not. Now, Baran does tell Riker, like, hey, I want you to befriend Galen to figure out who his friends on the ship are, because he's already very distrustful of Baran is very distrustful of Galen. And I love that he's like, Riker, I want you to befriend Galen. And I was like, well, this kind of works out perfectly. This is sort of convenient. And as Riker's like, I'm pretty sure I could do that. Let me try my best. He turns to leave, and Baran says, one more thing, Riker. When the time comes, I want you to be the one to kill Galen. And I was like, dang, okay, this, all of this is bad. I thought,
like, oh, that's perfect, because they can totally have a fake death scene, just like they had a fake fight scene with the Enterprise. So I was like, even better that Riker's the one who's being given this sacred task, because anyone else would just try to kill him for real.
Yeah, that's true.
But Riker can be like, oh, he wants me to kill you, so let's just like set our phasers to push, and then when I hit you with it, fall over really
just go
dramatically. Yeah, exactly, or whatever. So in any case, this is the plan, and Riker has like a kind of a really sketchy grin on his face and walks away. And you're like, oh, okay. He's playing his role, which is what Picard told him to do. Yeah. Back on the Enterprise, they have kind of,
they figured out the sequence.
They figured out the coordinates. They're heading there. They know that the other ship is going to take them 14 hours, but the Enterprise can get there in 5 because it's super fast and all that. So they're like, cool, we'll be waiting for them for like hours and hours. So like, let's head on over there. So when Data gives the orders for them to head to the coordinates, Worf has a total like hissy fit. Like,
he's like, oh, finally.
Yeah. And it's like, Andrea and I have a lot of experience with kids,
12-year-old.
Right? Exactly.
No. Exactly. Stop acting like a child. Stop.
We have a lot of experience with kids, and that behavior is an immediate.
Yep. Hard stop. Also, I don't have any tolerance for that either, where I'm like, knock it off. This is not appropriate for someone of your age.
It's not appropriate for anyone, really. I mean, if you're over the age of 6, maybe 3 or 4, you're too old to be like, finally. I mean, if you're at work and on the bridge and in front of everybody else and you're a senior staff, you know better. And I just felt like he was being really petty and disrespectful because Data was in charge in a way he would never have been if literally anyone else was in charge.
Absolutely.
Jordy, Beverly, Troy, anyone else, he would not have had that attitude.
Yeah, I think he's speaking in a way thinking he can't hurt Data's feelings, which is true. And Data is still going to make him toe the line as a Starfleet officer.
Right.
So Data's like,
behavior is inappropriate.
Step into my office, right? And Worf continues. He's like, you have continued to undermine the captain's role. I'm going to need you to just get it together. And if he has any objections, he should voice them in private and not in front of others. And I like that, Data says, like, if you are unable to do this role, I can put you back on tactical and I can have somebody else be my first officer. And Worf's like, I would like to remain on my post. So then Data's like, then get it the fuck together. Okay.
Yeah, seriously, because at first Worf was coming at him with even more attitude. He was like, well, I've always felt the need to say when I disagree or whatever. And I was like, really? I don't remember you ever giving Picard attitude when you disagree. Not a single time.
Ever gave Picard attitude was in the Conundrum episode when they had their memories wiped.
Yeah, or maybe the other time. Maybe the other time when he was like trying to go back to Klingon and something about family and honor or whatever. But on a typical day, if he disagrees, he goes, sir, what do you think if we maybe did XYZ? He does it in a respectful way. So he was kind of giving more attitude, and then Data just was not having any of that. And you're right. He was just like, then get it together. If you want to stay in this post, get it together. Yeah. And Worf was just like, he finally realized like, oh my gosh, I have been behaving totally inappropriately. What's wrong with me? And you just see it in his face like, shoot, like, what was I thinking? So he's like, okay. And he's like, I sir, yes. And he turns around to walk away, and then Data stops him and is like, I apologize if this has ended our friendship. And I was just like, so heartbreaking. But like,
and it wasn't even Data's call to make, right? Like, Data's not the one who ended the friendship. He just made his subordinate do the job he signed up for. It's like, do your job.
But he has enough emotional intelligence to know that this professional clash could lead to a personal clash, could lead to like the end of any closeness. And he's like aware of it, but this is what needed to happen. So he apologizes. And I love that because before he apologized, I was like, Worf owes him an apology because that attitude was not cool. But after Data apologizes, Worf goes, no, it's actually my fault. I'm the one who owe you an apology. I'm the one who threatened our friendship with my bad behavior, which like kudos for Worf. And then he goes, if you could please just overlook this incident, I would like to still call you my friend, if that's okay. And Data's like, that is acceptable. I'm like, oh, they still get to be friends.
Yeah. Yeah. And there really is, I've been saying this for years, there is nothing more attractive as a person in general to me, as someone who owns their behavior. Like, own it. Own it. Just say you're sorry. It's that easy. And I love that Worf is like, you know what? If anybody has jeopardized our friendship, it's me with my hissy fit, not
with my nonsense,
with calling me to task for my hissy fit, where it's like, so they go off and, all is cool. Now on the mercenary Scarab Beetle ship, Riker comes to see Picard, and Picard's like, okay, this artifact is Vulcan, not Romulan. Which thank God it's Picard who's analyzing this, because nobody else would have really been able to tell the difference, right?
Cared, right?
Yeah, or cared, right? They're like Romulan, Vulcan, tomato. And Riker's like, okay, well, as soon as you find the second artifact, Baran wants me to kill you. So we better come up with some sort of plan. And I love that Picard's like, well, we better start planning a mutiny then.
Better get on that sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And so Picard kind of does this like casual bad guy leaning against a wall, talking to the engineer, and he gets some intel about how Baran is unfit to lead. And that engineer agrees with him, but he's like, nobody's going to trust you. And he's like, Picard's like, well, who will they trust? And the engineer's like, Talera, and kind of walks off. And I was like,
he's like, I would follow Talera, and so would everybody else. And then walks away. And you're like,
he's like, no one would follow you, but they would follow Talera. Yeah.
Which makes sense. So that's 2 pieces of valuable information. 1, no one's following Picard. So we can just stop that whole line of thought. But 2, everyone already had, like, Talera already has everyone's loyalty over the captain. And I was like, oh, that's a really good partnership to make then, to really have this mutiny go well. Well, as soon as this guy walks out, Talera walks in and she pulls out a weapon on Picard, and she's like, who are you? And explain right now. And I was like, the jig is
up.
Can't be good. This can't be good.
Turns out she found the message that he sent to the Enterprise. So she was like, do not play dumb with me. You must be Starfleet. It is the only logical explanation. And I was like, logic strikes again. Hooray.
The logic that Captain Baran is sorely missing is paid up for like in tenfold through Talera.
Yeah. So, and she says, my name is actually T'Pol. I'm a member of the Vishar, Vulcan Security. She said she infiltrated the ship a year ago and is investigating this band of merry space pirates. And I was like, oh my God, who do we trust? It's like a double cross.
It really is. And so she goes on to explain that there's this Vulcan sect that's super xenophobic, and they want to eradicate any alien influence on the planet of Vulcan, and they want to do it by any means necessary. So they're even more dangerous than the mercenaries. And the mercenaries have been hired by this sect to basically recover something called the Stone of Gaul, which is a weapon that can focus telepathic energy and kill people with literally a thought. So she's like, I will do anything. You just know. And Picard comes clean and says who he is and all that stuff. So they're like, I
was like, no, don't do it. Don't trust anybody.
It's such a tricky situation. But at this point, they're laying all their cards on the table. So then Picard's like familiar with this ancient weapon because he knows all about ancient-y things. And so they're on the same page, and she tells him, look, I cannot allow this to fall into the hands of the isolationists. So I will destroy anything to make sure that this weapon is not rebuilt. I will destroy the ship. I will destroy this crew. I will destroy every single one of us just to keep this weapon from being rebuilt. So that goes a long way in my mind to convincing Picard that she's on the right side. But of course, I had all kinds of sus signals going up for me because I was just like, spy games inside of spy games. That means you just can't trust anybody.
Spy
Who says
game
she
inception.
Really is T'Pol? Like, I don't know. Who says there is
what are you going to Google
race?
her?
Yeah, like, there's no. And actually, you brought up Conundrum earlier. That was the secret in Conundrum for the guy who took over the whole ship is that you can't talk to Starfleet about this because it's a secret mission and it'll be intercepted by the bad guys and blah, 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 blah. And it's like this way to keep. It's just like such a tricky spy game to keep people from checking anything. Not that he's in a position to check anything because he's on this mercenary ship, but like, you know what I mean? Just this idea of like, there's no checks and balances. You just have to trust each other in a situation where no one trusts anyone because everyone's untrustworthy.
Yes. Yeah.
So now at least we have a mission. So now we've got some point.
This is why espionage is taken so seriously, right? This is why espionage is punishable by death if you're caught, right? Because you can never trust that person again, especially with life and death secrets. So it's like, this is why spies are eliminated.
Right. You can't trust them, so they can't be just simply imprisoned.
Yes, you can't do that,
because their secrets can still get out that way.
Right. So now T'Pol and Picard agree to continue their masquerade. I'm going to keep calling her Talera, but she says she cannot allow the resonator to be reassembled. She says, like, I will destroy the ship and the crew to keep it from being used ever again, right? So it's like, ooh, now we actually have some stakes because we didn't have stakes before. The only real stakes were, oh my God, Picard has died. Oh my God, Riker's been kidnapped. Oh wait, Picard's alive. So now Picard and Riker are alive on the ship. Those were the stakes, but it's like you could lock on transporters and beam them, whatever, right? Like this, now we actually have stakes, right? So the Enterprise arrives at what they think is the next rendezvous spot, but they find this like little Klingon shuttle. And the captain identifies himself as Koral, but refuses point blank to answer any of Data's questions. And he refuses by just silenting, like being silent.
Well, he says no.
Oh, so that's right.
Data's like, can you tell me about your mission? He's like, no. Can you tell me why you're here? No. Well, it's so funny. So they end up tractoring the ship onto the Enterprise with some chumped up charge, and they come up with some BS.
Health and safety inspection crap.
Yeah, they come up with some BS. So Worf and Beverly can scan the entire ship from front to back to try to figure out what's going on. In the meantime, they take Koral to the observation lounge with Data and Troy, who are trying to make small talk, trying to give him blood wine, trying to get anything out of him.
Nothing.
He pours the wine on the floor. He refuses to answer any questions. He's not playing this game.
Wait, this dude, I need to say, is absolutely fucking gigantic.
Yeah, he's like 12 feet tall.
Yeah, Worf is a very tall Klingon, right? He's very imposing and scary looking. Koral makes him look like my size, and I'm barely scratching 5'1". Like I'm pretty tiny. So it's like, wow, Worf looks so little. So I looked into this. Turns out NBA star James Worthy had a chance meeting with Robert O'Reilly on an airplane, which I guess was one of the like crew members of, worked on TNG. And so James Worthy admitted his desire to appear on the show. And at O'Reilly's urging, they met with Rick Berman and Michael Piller, who then were like, let's find a cameo or some sort of role for him. And this timed perfectly with the need for filler elements in the episode. So Koral was created. For reference, James Worthy clocks in at 6'9".
You know what's so crazy about that?
7 feet tall.
I thought because he was so freakishly tall, I thought it was just like a trick of the camera. Like they had him standing on a platform because
you the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Because you see him coming down his own ramp and he's huge.
Yeah.
But because Beverly and Worf are like on the ground, you're like, it could be like this superimposed parent trap situation. And then when he comes off the ramp and he's standing next to Worf and you can see he towers over him by like a full 1.5 feet.
At least.
You can't see their feet. So I'm like, they must have him standing on like a crate or something for him to look so tall. I had no idea he really was tall in real life.
6'9". And because they had him standing on the top of the ramp, he had like another 4 or 5 inches on top of Worf. And then he had like the big Klingon boot. So that was like another like 4 inches. So yeah, he fucking towers over Gates McFadden, who plays Beverly. And I love the camera angle. One of the angles, when they're doing the little trumped up charges and Beverly's like, I'm just going to sneak past you to like scan for, radiation leaks or something. They have the camera angle right above, shooting from above, like Koral's like right shoulder. So pointing straight down at Beverly and her neck is craning up so high.
Yeah, she's looking straight up at like 90 degree angle.
I was like, pause. Let me look up this dude. Like, and I typed in like Koral, who is he? And it actually gave me an answer. So I was like, thank you, Google. Anyway.
It's funny. When I talk to my nephew, I have to also look up at a 90 degree angle. It's like that gigantic. He's only 18, but I've been doing that since he was like 14, 15.
Oh my God, yeah.
Straight up, which is crazy.
It is pretty funny.
I was like, now the tables have turned.
Yeah.
It used to be you looking straight up at me and never again.
No.
But anyways, he's giant and such a great role. Such a great role too for a cameo because he the only lines he has is no. Or not saying anything at all.
Or saying Koral. Yeah.
And it fits perfectly with this character. Like this was a really good character.
They did an amazing job. What a fantastic cameo. And really, outside of the NBA, like where really are you going to find people that's that tall? Like the odds are so, the NBA is completely made. Even like the little short shrimpy looking guys in the NBA are like 5'11" or 6 feet. The ones that look all tiny and shit. They look like Kevin Hart compared to Shaq. And they're like fucking 6 feet
and they're
tall.
Still giants. Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell? Anyway, so there's tall people all over, but this was a great place to like find one and to just have a chance encounter on an airplane. Like, who knew, right? So this mercenary ship ends up getting a message from Koral. He's been taken by the Enterprise. Baran then decides that this group of Mickey Mouse space pirates needs to board the flagship of the Federation. Really?
Steal the artifact and then get away. And Picard as Galen,
LOL on this plan. I was like, you think that you 4 morons are gonna board the Enterprise and nothing's gonna happen?
Which is exactly what Galen says, which is what Picard as Galen says. He's like, what are you talking? There's 5 of us. You know how many security guards and like freaking
there are 30 million decks
stuff.
Yeah,
there's
like get out of here.
Cargo bays. There's force fields aplenty. Like, what are we gonna do?
At least barely got
off that bare planet. We barely got off. Just running through past the rocks. We barely got off, and they weren't even ready for us. And you're just like, this is a
we're dropping plan. Pottery and shit. Like, we're not ready.
Yeah, we're not ready to take on this fight. But Baran, being the leader he is like, do it or else. Yeah. And so Galen is like, this is a really stupid plan. It's never going to work. And Riker's like, I think I can make it work. And so then Baran's like, all right, Galen, you go with him if you're so worried about the plan not working. And Galen's like, fine, suits me. So
he's like, I'm okay with that. And I was like, whoopee, this is all
I know. Now they're both going to be on the Enterprise and like basically have escaped under Baran's own nose.
Yeah.
So so he leaves. And then as Riker leaves to go like get together their away team or whatever, Baran's like, all right, this is your chance, Riker. Make sure you come back without Galen. Wink, wink, wink. Mm-hmm. Friendly fire. And he's like, I got it. And you're like, okay, well, for some reason, this made me laugh. For some reason, this ragtag band, okay, they beam to the cargo bay, right? Because that's where the ship is.
That's where Koral's shuttle is. Yeah.
That's where Koral's shuttle is. And they are looking for this artifact. So they beam down and poor Beverly and Worf are just like, what what is going on? Because Riker's alive, but holding a weapon to them. As soon as the doors open, Picard's there, which is like such a shock. And the doors open, like firstly, they beam in. The second they materialize, some poor innocent bystander walks into the cargo bay, unfortunately timed, and Riker shoots him down immediately. And you're like, what? What just happened? Like, this poor guy, he was just on his duty ship, maybe coming to have some lunch or drop off a pail or who knows what. Gets shot just walking into his room.
I'm sorry. Drop off a pail?
It looked like he was holding a pail. But I was so shocked by the getting shot thing. I wasn't paying attention.
You know, the Enterprise just dropping off pails of shit places.
We're lucky it wasn't O'Brien just walking in being like, hey guys, what's going on?
I know, right? I'm really, really hoping that Riker double checked to make sure his weapon was set to tip over setting, because he knocks.
Well, he ends up shooting everybody, so he must have checked before he's beamed over.
Yeah,
but
he straight up said, sorry about this, and then fucking blasts Worf and Beverly like in the
and he
chest.
double tapped them. Did you notice that? It was like,
it's like pew,
pew. You're like, oh, we never needed 2 shots before. Wow. You wanted to make sure that, okay. Well, then, so they scan the ship, the little shuttle, and they're like, it's not here. It must be on Koral's body or something. And then they're like, where is he? He's in the observation lounge, which is like 14 decks up or whatever. And Riker's like, I know what we'll do. Let's beam over there. And I was like, why don't you just beam Koral back here? What are you talking about? This is the dumbest, most inefficient plan. Just beam Koral to where you are if you're going to use site-to-site transport. Then you'll have one guy with the 5 of you get your thing and go back to your ship. But instead,
see, my thought was, oh, now y'all use site-to-site transport. Now you do this because everybody doesn't use site-to-site transport when you could just use that to get people out of emergencies. But
like
now
when
all
there's like a medical emergency, they're like, we're on deck 17. Someone help us. Like, buddy, that's what this whole ship is for. What are we doing?
They do beam straight into the observation lounge, shocking the daylights out of Troy and Data,
who are both staring with their mouths open at Picard and Riker, alive and armed.
And Koral has just been busy dumping Klingon blood wine on the carpet to show his disdain for them, right? And so they pat him down, and what's interesting is the very first spot they choose to pat down is exactly where the artifact is. So I was like, well, that was convenient.
Yeah,
and
it was good that he was holding it like near his tummy, because there could have been more awkward places he could have held that particular artifact. So it worked out. And it basically was like a D20 die for those people who play Dungeons and Dragons. It was very small. It could have slipped into any place. So it's very helpful that he happened to have it right near his belly button.
Well, by the way, Shereese's face when talking about all the places it could have been. I wish you guys could see your face.
It's very unpleasant places it could have been.
It could have been, yeah.
But it was fine.
But in my mind, I'm like, we could just scan his body and transport it out of his butt, like right onto the ship. You don't have to do a search. Just beam it right out of this dude. Like,
if you beam it out of his butt, can you beam it totally clean with like nothing? So many questions I have about this technology.
Transport for like biofilters, like clean it all up, sanitize it, blast it with UV light, whatever. Like, do whatever. Anyway, well, glad we didn't have to go down that road.
We didn't.
It was like in a little secret pocket in his jacket, so they pulled it right.
The last place anyone would look, his jacket pocket.
Yeah,
for the top secret, super valuable artifact.
Yeah. It's not even a pocket that had a zipper on it either. Like you could just go running really fast and it bounce out and like fall anyway. Whatever. So now that they have the artifact, Riker tries shooting Picard, but Picard gets the drop on Riker and kind of tucks and rolls on the ground and shoots Riker first. And Troy bends over Riker. And Picard goes, is he dead? And Troy goes, yes. And then they all beam away. And Riker's only stunned. And he's like, he comes to and he's all groggy. It's like 2 seconds later. He's like, So
then you're like, well, this does bode well for Beverly and Worf and Rando. That they're all going to be A-okay. They're probably awake now.
With his little pail of milk. Yeah.
Pail. The random farmer who just was doing his duty.
He was one dude left behind from that Irish colony.
Oh man, that episode was so bad.
It's so dumb. Worse than this one, it turns out. But aboard the mercenary ship, Picard delivers the artifact and a solid punch to Baran's jaw. So Picard actually leads a mutiny. He's like, I think it's time for a shift change or whatever he says. And Baran takes out that neurological weapon and sets it to kill. And somehow Picard has managed to like Expelliarmus the transponder codes. So Baran's
he did a little swap-a-do where he changed the transponder codes from his codes to Baran's codes because Baran had...
When would you have had a chance to do that, man? Come on.
Well, at the same time that he was lowering the power efficiency of the weapons before firing on the Enterprise, the same time that he was like resonating with like the shield generators at the freaking station that he's never seen before but knows the exact harmonic frequency to turn off their shields instantly in 10 seconds of thought. The same amount of time.
Girl, this thing is like a Swiss cheese sandwich. It's just completely full of plot holes.
His mind is wasted as a captain. He should be an engineer. Like his mind is wasted.
Yeah, totally.
Like his diplomacy is not as cool as all that he's been doing in these 2 episodes. Yeah. So who knows when, but he swapped it so that because Baran still had a little neck thing because that was a holdover from the past captain. Yeah. So everybody had one. So when he goes to murder Galen, he actually kills himself, which again was like very Starfleet, right? Like I didn't lay a hand on him.
He did it to himself. Yep.
You're like, yeah, but did he do it on purpose? He was trying to kill you, and you did turn that around on him. You still kind of did that. Yeah. And then you like punched him in the face and provoked him to make him push the button.
And as far as we know, that was self-inflicted. And if I'm really keeping with my Harry Potter like metaphors, as far as we know, he hasn't made any Horcruxes of himself. So Baran is dead. Like that's it.
Yes.
And Picard takes over.
He's dead. And let me tell you, nobody bats an eyelash.
Yeah. They're like, okay, then tacos for lunch. Like it's just business as usual. Now, Riker aboard the Enterprise recovered, speaks to the Vulcan like CIA head basically. And he's like, okay, Picard told me everything that T'Pol has said. You need to be on the lookout for this mercenary ship, and warns them about the psionic resonator weapon. And the CIA head is like, there must be some kind of mistake. We have no operative aboard a mercenary ship. And I was like, oh no, it's a double cross. Yeah. Which makes me want In-N-Out really bad. But I was like, yeah, this is a double. Well,
oh, okay. I was like, that took me a minute.
In-N-Out hamburgers, they make a double. It's a double cheeseburger and it's delicious. And if you don't live in California, I am dreadfully sorry because they're so delicious. It's like a cult favorite out here. Anyway,
yeah, so worth a visit if you're ever out this way.
Yeah, if you're ever out in SoCal, swing by In-N-Out and get a burger. They're delish. All right, so Picard, who's still trusting Tallera, brainstorms with her about the artifact. And I loved this little breakdown. You know, when they try to explain shit to the audience, but like they try to dumb it down so much that we're like, yeah, we got it. It shows, he says like, okay, this glyph here shows the Vulcan god of war. And this glyph over here shows the Vulcan god of death, which each of them would normally stand alone. But there is a third glyph missing in between them. And he says, if you look carefully, you'll notice there's a third glyph, which is missing. And then he points to this giant, obvious gap.
A gap that to me would not present itself as a glyph is missing here. Like, how do we know it wasn't built in this shape?
It looks like it was just built in that shape.
Yeah, it looked like it was supposed to make a V shape, like a Vulcan V shape. Like, that made sense to me.
By the way, there were no, like, I paused and looked at it. There wasn't, like,
there were no indentations or raised
like there wasn't
anything.
like a foot or a hand or a something that you're like,
It's missing the other half. But yeah, we just have to be like, well, Picard's a archaeological genius and knows that this comes in pieces or something.
I guess. By the way, fun little fact about this glyph. The prop masters who worked on this made a point of having to etch hair onto the Vulcan gods of war and death because they had them bald at first and they looked so much like Captain Picard that they were like, no, you gotta pop some hair on those guys. And so that's what they did. So if you ever go back and look at it, it's like some really awkwardly placed hair that's just kind of like straw etched on their heads, which I was like, that's kind of cool.
They weren't smooth-headed glyphs.
Yeah, they were not smooth-headed, right? So Tallera wants to go down alone to
Wait, here's my favorite part about this, though. Okay, there's a couple things about the scene I want to dig into before Tallera
Let's do
dips. So one of the things I love, and this is because we are nerds and we are surrounded by nerds, is I love the way he's nerding out about this artifact in a way that Tallera could not possibly care about. He's like, if you see this, and if you see this, and the grain of it is so soft, and also if you see like the way that the marble was like made and how it was like compressed, and she's just like, I'm okay. Hey, buddy, I'm not I'm not an expert in these things. Cause I was like, she's getting really suspicious now. Like she's acting really suspiciously. How is she going to get out of this? And then she just goes, well, I'm not an expert in this. I was like, ooh, that's a good line, but doesn't deter him. He keeps on going and going and going with all the little details. And it just made me laugh. It just tickled me.
Every single one of us at least one point in our lives talking about sci-fi, if not particularly Star Trek, to someone who couldn't give a shit. And they're like
100%. It's
phasers,
like
right?
It's like me explaining
laser battle.
Any book that I ever read to a non-sci-fi fan. And I'm like, well, it all takes place in the future during an apocalypse. Okay, blank stares.
Stop
They're already
right there.
out. They're already out. And I'm like, but the society, nope, you lost me at future apocalypse. You lost me.
Dystopian, what? Never mind.
So,
I guess
so they're on a ship, but the ship is at hello. Wait, hello. Yeah, exactly. So it just made me laugh. I was just like, Picard, I totally feel you here. Okay, so that was one thing. The other thing is that Picard starts to suggest that he should come with Talera, and he says, okay, so I had Riker talk to the Vulcan officials, by the way, so that they know we're coming.
Yeah.
And she just freezes and she's like, what? Mm-hmm. Why did you do that? He's like, so there's no misunderstandings since we're going to be coming in this mercenary ship.
Yeah.
We don't want them to like accidentally fire on us or something. And she's like, yes, that was very wise. I was going to do that myself.
She's totally tripped up. Mm-hmm. She's totally tripped up by this.
And if she was who she claimed to be, she should be like, woohoo, why didn't I think of that or whatever? Or she should have a handler who she's already talking to about this. So anyways, this was like fishy flag number one. And then Picard's like, okay, well, should I signal the Enterprise because you're saying there's all these isolationists down there and it sounds really dangerous? And she's like, no, this ship will be more than sufficient to handle it. So it's fishy flag number 2. And the Picard's like, all right, we'll all come down on the planet with you. So at least you have some backup. You're not alone. No, this is a Vulcan matter. Vulcans only. Nobody but
fishy
Vulcans are allowed.
Flag number 3.
And at this point, I feel like Picard is like, okay, all right. All the trust that I had, the like little thin strands of trust we've been building have now been snapped and set on fire.
Yep.
Because now you're acting completely suspicious about everything. And what about this whole, I'm going to destroy it. It can't ever fall in the wrong hands. And now it's turned into, we've got to get all the pieces together and I have to take it down to the sanctuary where the isolationists are alone to get our payment. Yeah. It's like your story just flipped.
Yes. They do arrive at Vulcan and Picard's like, listen, leave one of the pieces behind. So she obviously doesn't like this, and he doesn't trust her at all anymore, right?
And he says this on the bridge in front of the entire mercenary crew as she's heading off.
Yes. Yeah. And so she doesn't like this. And so she decides to just blow Picard's cover that he's Starfleet and he's this and that. And I thought it was weird that the team was totally like unfazed by this. I was like, hello? Did you guys?
Well, they actually did. This? They actually looked surprised and angry, and they start to turn like kind of their bodies and their weapons against Picard. But before, like by the time she finished her sentence, Picard goes, yes, that's true. But did she tell you the truth? And so they kind of pause. And then he goes, what she's building is a really powerful weapon and there is no payment. And that's when they go, wait a minute. That's when they forget about him being Starfleet, because this whole time they've been risking their lives in this complete inept search for who knows what, because they were promised this huge payday. So when they heard he was Starfleet, they were like, what a traitor. And then when they heard no pay, then they were like, wait a minute.
Even worse. Yeah. What's funny is it's a huge weapon. It'll kill millions. They're like, wait, no pay.
Exactly.
No pay.
And that to me, that tracks, because that's what they care about.
Mercenaries.
Yeah. And then the woman with the really cool like haircut, she was just like, I don't care who either of you are. I just want to make sure I get paid. I don't care about anything with politics, with your background, nothing. I don't care about betrayal. Who cares? I just want my money. And I want to make sure I get my money. And I was like, that kind of tracks too, to be like, that she was saying the same thing. She was like, do whatever you want with the weapons, as long as I get paid first. So then Talera's like, fine, you can come down to the planet with me to get your money.
Everybody can come.
Yeah, fine, everybody can come. And you're like, I really do feel like there was never any payment to be made. However, when they get down to the planet, there actually is payment there, which I was surprised by, because I thought the cave was going to be totally empty, or maybe have some bad guys there.
Why would you even have half of the payment? Just have nothing. You could use the weapon to kill these pirates and be like, do, and go about your merry way.
I feel like the double cross was always the plan. So I'm not sure why there was payment there of any amount, but there was less than half of the payment promised instead of like zero payment. So of course they were super pissed about it. And Talera is busy assembling the weapon and she's all excited and she's like, just take it and go. Be happy with what you have. And I was like, now you know these people are not going to be happy with this. Didn't they just say?
No.
Didn't we just have this discussion? They've been doing all this for their full amount of pay. You could have paid them and they would have left. They would have left you and Picard there and you and the weapon happily and never come back.
There would have been like, toot toot, bye. And you would just see their little warp trail zipping off into the distance.
But she decided to cheat them, but also bring them here to see that they've been cheated.
Don't try to cheat a crook.
Or
they'll kill you.
Or cheat them more effectively. I don't know. It just was
something.
This just was dumb.
Well, she ends up building. She puts together the final piece of the artifact.
It's surprisingly easy to build.
Yeah, it's like, turns out it's Legos. Yeah, and she just snapped it together.
Like what are those big Duplos or whatever, the giant Legos?
Yeah,
it's like 3 pieces.
It's the like 3-year-old version that's got just giant block. It's basically trying to put a circle into a circle hole and just drop those pieces like little kids do, like put the star in the star-shaped hole, right? So she finds the missing piece and she's like, it is complete. And then she turns the psionic resonator on the 2 pirates and kills them with some pretty crappy CGI.
With an electric glob of goo.
Yes. And Picard is like, you'll never get away with it, which is, of course, what the good guys always say.
Well, here's the best part. She goes into monologue, which is what the bad guys always say.
Thank you. I wrote that too. I was like, as she's monologuing,
you could have just shot him.
Away team just beams down.
Right? Yep. I was like, you gave him plenty of time because you were like, it all started when I was 6. I never wanted to be a villain. You painted me into this picture. Oh man, the cavalry is here. How much time did you think you had for a speech, girl? Make the speech after you shoot him. What is going on here? My dad
used to get so mad about that in TV and movies where he was like,
dumb.
It's so stupid. Like, can we please get off the monologue train? Get off of it. No bad guys monologue. This isn't Royal Shakespeare Company. They shoot you and they walk off. Yes, that's what happens.
It reminds me of, there's this one scene in one of the Indiana Jones movies, like the good ones, where this guy has
Thank you for clarifying, because there are really that one.
So we're only referring to the good ones. And there's
the first 3.
There's this one scene where it's a guy with like the nunchucks who's trying to fight Indy, and Indy just pulls out his gun and shoots him and just walks away.
He's got a sword. He's got a sword that he's whipping around.
Yeah, something. And he's like, ha, 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 because that's usually what they do in the movies. And then they have a big fight, and then it's like and he just pulls out his gun, it's like boom, and everyone's like, oh. And you're like, yeah, that's exactly what someone would actually do. He's not getting in a sword fight with you when he has a gun. That doesn't make any sense.
You might have already heard this because this has been pretty widely circulated. But in case you don't, I find this delightful. That scene in Indiana Jones where the guy is brandishing his sword to show off like how fucking swordy he is, and Indy just like pulls out his gun and looks really grumpy and just shoots him and walks off. Turns out Harrison Ford was supposed to like have a big battle with him. Yes, except because they were filming on location, Harrison Ford had gotten like dysentery or something. He had gotten like horrifically ill, and he was being forced to film because they were on time constraints. So he was like, fuck this. And he just pulls out his gun and shoots him and walks away. That was unscripted.
Wow. And it was like the best scene in the movie.
It's the best scene because he just looks like so like,
that was unscripted. Like, the actor just like played along with it. The one who fell down just played along with pretending to be shot. That was great.
I guess so.
Or they did it over and over after they saw how genius it was.
Yeah, and so it's like an iconic scene now. But yeah, it's right. Like, we don't have time for monologuing. So she keeps saying, like, pick up the weapon, Picard, right? Because, like, one of the pirates, like, dropped their weapon.
And he's like, and he won't not pick it up. You're like, okay. Yes.
Yeah, so she starts monologuing. Starfleet away team beams down, and Picard is like, drop your weapons, drop your weapons. So somehow from 15, 20 feet away, he can see this 3-inch glyph that's dark on a dark background. So I was like,
in a dark cave.
In a dark cave, right? With deathy stuff happening. Turns out that the missing glyph is the symbol for peace. Here's our oh wait. No, okay. I would say here's our like swelling the moral of the story music comes in. Violence can be overcome with happy thoughts. Okay. This is feeling a lot like a moral, and I know how much you love a moral, girl.
Yeah, it was dumb, but what I liked about it is how they tied it into something that actually does make sense. Now, he said that back in the day, Vulcans had a lot of violence and chaos and craziness, which is what we hear a lot about the world building of the Vulcans. But at some point they had peace, which is what we hear a lot about them too. Like, they have discipline and logic and peace. And we don't hear a lot about the transition from point A to point B. We just know before they were all chaotic and brutal, and now they're all logical and peaceful, but they still have those dark thoughts, but they just know how to control them. So what I really liked was that they said this weapon was from a time when it was warfare all the time. But when they learned to control all of those dark impulses and really channel peace, and kind of like that logic and that, not flying off the handle with everything, they just no longer needed this weapon. It just was, it became useless because it became ineffective and unnecessary in their culture. And I really like that they tied that back to something that made sense to be like, oh, that's why they would have had this weapon. And that's why they would have dismantled this weapon. And that's why the weapon just stopped working. Like, it made so much sense as opposed to like, this was just a big bad weapon and they dismantled it for safety, but they didn't destroy it, which would have been smarter. And then someone rebuilt it and, now they're just going to go on a rampage, which is usually what we see in, like Batman cartoons or whatever. It's something like that where you're like, well, why don't you just destroy this super bad weapon instead of dismantling it and scattering it? So I actually did appreciate that. I felt like that took a little bit of thought to be like, okay, how do we connect this with something else that actually makes sense culturally? Because we've been talking about archaeology and all of this. So I appreciated that. And so we see she's trying to fight people with the electric goo and she's trying to shoot it at everybody. And it's just passing through every single person. And Picard's like, empty your minds, think only peaceful thoughts. And he says like the way the weapon works is that it amplifies all of those violent thoughts. And that's what actually kills you. It's your own thoughts that kill you, not the person holding the weapon, which is also super interesting. It's not you are killing them with a thought. It's they are killing themselves with a thought and you're amplifying those thoughts. So as long as everybody's happy and peaceful, you're good. You're good. So she falls down like, no.
Useless. I love that she tries a couple more times and she's like, and they're like, ooh. So Talera and the electric
she can in her evil little heart.
Yeah. I feel like she should be the headliner with a band called like T'Pol and the Electric Goo Machine or something. She'll be playing
Baran be like the head singer or something, the lead singer.
Totally. I forgot about Baran. Anyway, so this weapon is totally useless against peaceful thoughts. So, the jig is up. Some things are best left in the past. And now everything is like fine. All is well that ends
everyone
well,
gets
apparently.
arrested.
Everyone
gets arrested by the Vulcan security. The mercenaries get arrested by the Vulcan security, but they're also wanted on like 12 other planets or something.
Of course.
So they're just, everyone's going to be in prison forever or whatever. So I guess all's well that ends well. And then Picard, Data, and Riker are heading to Riker's quarters, and they're kind of tying up loose ends and talking about what happened to the mercenaries and stuff, which is kind of interesting because so many times in season 1 or season 2, I remember being like, where are they now? Like, I want to know what happens. But for this case, I was just like, I don't really care. Like, of course, I assume they're going to get arrested or blown up or something. It's
whatever.
Fine. Yeah, like
arrested, blown up.
Either way, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds about right. Like, either way, that would track with this whole story, right? Like, fine.
So, guys, if you're hoping Shereese is going to write the end of your story, don't ask her to do that because you're either going to get arrested or blown up.
Only
and
if you're a mercenary, it's going to be, and then it's your own fault. So, Picard is like, trying to take control or whatever, and Riker kind of teasingly says, well, you were declared dead, so you can't actually take over the Enterprise. Maybe you should go get some sleep instead. And Picard's like, I'm super tired. That's a great idea. And he goes, and then Data goes, well, Commander Riker, you were declared a renegade, so you can't take command either. And Picard's like, that's true. Mr. Data, go ahead and escort him to the brig. Ha, 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 ha. And so, he goes into his quarters and the Data's like, this way, sir, and starts escorting Riker to the brig. And Riker's like, wait, that was a joke, right? That was a joke, Mr. Data. And then it's like freeze frame and the episode's over and the credits roll. And you're like, okay, well, that was a cute ending.
Cute little ending.
I don't know, but it was a cute ending. I
thought it was a lighthearted little ending. Yeah, we really could have, or just like a bum 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 bum.
Like that would have been fine. As you see her sitting there, like no, and Picard just takes the weapon from her shaking hands, and they all look at each other, and then we just end. That would have worked for me.
Yeah, you know what? It would have been great if they would have like put the weapon on the floor and then hit it with a phaser and destroyed it. And it's like, okay, like
no, they're gonna scatter it. They're gonna give one to Klingon. They're gonna give one to the Romulans. They're gonna put one to the Federation. They're gonna give it to a trusted delegate to take it far away. So stupid. But in any case,
it's
my final thoughts was I actually liked all the double and triple crossings happening in the episode. I thought that was really interesting, and I didn't know who to trust, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I really loved the world building in both of these episodes so much. I love the character development. I love the world building. It made sense and that flowed. So overall, I give it a thumbs up. What are your final thoughts?
I mean, I'm kind of with you on this. One thing that I actually do really enjoy in any book or TV show or movie is the moment where Riker realized that Talera is not who she says she is to Picard, right? So we know a little morsel of truth that's very important to the story before the main character learns it. And it's just a matter of time until the jig is up. But I always love stuff like that, like the double, triple, quadruple, quintuple cross. Like those are always fun. But yeah, having that little bit of information where that Vulcan operative was like, we have no agents working in the field right now. It's like, what? That's always kind of fun because you're like, ooh, you feel like you're just ahead of the story by like 2 minutes. And that's kind of a fun feeling.
It makes you feel smart. It's very Sherlock Holmesy, where you're like, I know exactly. Make you feel smart. I can totally solve this puzzle because you just told me exactly how the puzzle gets solved.
But I can solve all by myself.
It makes me feel smart. Yeah.
Yeah, it does make us feel smart. Yeah, it was a fun episode. Like it wasn't terrible. I thought it was going to be way worse than it actually was. It wasn't great, but it wasn't as terrible. But as I think I said last week, because there are just so many spectacular episodes of TNG, this is one that's like kind of a skip for me just because it's like, okay. There's like so many other great ones.
Yeah, I wouldn't add this to my rewatch list, but I would not put it on a bad list. This episode and the last episode were both
don't watch list.
Yeah, they were both good. They were not great. They were not exceptional. They were not one of the ones where it's like, oh my gosh, I have to watch it again. Now that it's over, I have to watch it again. But they were good. Like, and surprisingly so. Like this could not fit in season 1 at all.
No way.
Not at all.
No way. If this did fit in season 1, it would have been one of the stronger ones.
It would have been one of the best episodes. Yeah. So I'm just really impressed by the quality that we're getting here in season 7. Like you can really see
100%
every single like department is running their A++ game for every episode. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good the story is or how bad the story is. Everything that they make is going to be as great as they can make it. And even the CGI goo, which looks bad now, was probably really cool back then.
I remember it as a kid. I thought it looked really cool as a kid.
Yeah. So, I mean,
but watching it now in HD, it's like, oh, okay.
Watching it now, it looks dumb, but like, a lot of their effects don't keep well. And then when they do, you're like, whoa, that actually still looks good. Like, it's always impressive. So I just think everybody was running on all cylinders. And while it wasn't the best episode of ever, it was definitely not the worst. It was definitely not bad, which like really I was pleasantly surprised in the sense that I thought it was going to be like so bad.
Terrible. Yeah. Well, on that note, next week, guys, we are breaking down season 7, episode 6, Phantasms. Thank you so much for nerding out with us this week, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks for geeking out with us. Be sure to join the crew at thetngpodcast.com to be the first to know when we do our live shows or host events exclusively for our members. We'll see you next time.